21 Legends, which is the best to dominate on the battlefield. These rankings are all based on the best legends to win the most games. Let's get right into it. Let's start with the D tier, and first on the list is Lifeline. A positive about her is she has very quick healing that you can heal yourself and your teammates while you're healing up your shields, but her ultimate is pretty lackluster. There is multiple different ways that you can gain loot now, especially with the new armories that are introduced. They took away her big shield while she's reviving, so she may be good to revive and still engage in combat, but Lifeline definitely needs a buff. Next on the list is your Season 12 legend, Mad Maggie. So a positive about her is her tactical ability, the Riot Drill, is really good against defensive legends such as Gibraltar and Newcastle to stop them from hiding behind their walls. But a huge negative is Mad Maggie's ultimate, the Wrecking Ball, is pretty underwhelming. It's kind of hard to precisely throw out that Wrecking Ball, and it doesn't do a lot of damage or effects against the opponents. It really gives you some speed burst to catch up to the opponents, but it's really underwhelming compared to other ultimates in the game. Next on the list is Revenant. A positive about Revenant is his silence is really good against a lot of abilities, especially in Apex Legends, where abilities are such a key focus in the gameplay. Revenant's silence can really alter those abilities quite well. But a huge negative about Revenant is his totem seems to be pretty weak. It's pretty easy to defend against, and it's really hard if you're solo queuing to get all your teammates on the page of when you're going to use your death totem for Revenant. And the final one in D tier, and sadly, is Mirage. A positive about Mirage is he's very fun to play, and his revive is pretty good because you do disappear. But a huge negative is once you get into the higher tier gameplays, Mirage isn't quite as deceptive as once thought to be. It's pretty easy to figure out which is the decoys and which is the real Mirage. So in high competitive gameplay, you do not see Mirage as much, but he is very fun to play and a fan favorite. Next, let's dive into the Seer tier. And the first on the list is Seer. A positive of him is his tactical ability, the focus of attention. It is really good at canceling enemy healing and revives. But a negative is his ultimate is pretty easy to counter. All you have to do is crouch walk around and you do not show up on his ultimate. And make sure you stick around to find out who Seer would be very well paired with. And next on the list is Wattson. A positive of a Wattson is that her ultimate really helps out the whole team. Not only does it stop bombardments and grenades and other throwables, but it also increases your shield and regenerates shield for the entire team. A negative about Wattson though is that she is very defensive character. So with the movement-based metas that we've seen a lot in Apex, she can be very hard to get into fights and get out of fights if she is that very defensive character. But stick around to see who you should pair Wattson with. Next on the list is Fuse. A big positive of Fuse is he deals a lot of damage, whether it be his stacking of the grenades when you throw them or his tactical or ultimate ability. He does have the ability to deal a lot of damage. A negative of Fuse though is his passive becomes non-existent if you run out of your nades and you don't have any in your inventory. But stick around to find out who you should pair Fuse with. And the final one in the Seer tier is Loba. Her ultimate is very good early game and maybe even end game if you're hunkering down in an area and you need some shield swaps or you need some loot. Her ultimate is very great. A negative of a Loba though is her passive is very lackluster. Trying to find those gold or purple loot items are pretty easily considering we have all kinds of loot bins, armories, replicators. So throughout the mid game and late game, her passive can be pretty lackluster. Now let's get into the B tier. And first on the list is Octane. He is definitely a fan favorite and an OG. He is great with movement and fast to get around, really great at repositioning. But a negative about Octane is every time you use the stim, it takes away a huge chunk of your health. And if you overuse the stim, you can get caught in a situation where you have a lot less health going into a fight, and which could create you getting knocked a lot quicker. Stick around though to see who you should pair Octane with. Next on the list is Rampart. Rampart just received a bunch of buffs that deal with her wall and her ultimates, which makes her a very viable option. I think she is a hugely underrated character this season, so go ahead and try her out. A negative about Rampart though would be LMGs just got a big nerf across the board with a lot of LMGs, but if LMGs is your playstyles, give Rampart a tryout and stick around to find out who you should pair Rampart with. Next on the list is Crypto. Crypto can be one of the best recon legends, and using his drone, you can really help out your whole team in scouting an area and finding out where your enemies are. A negative about Crypto though is he can be very hard to use and a high skill level to use. And if you're not using it right, Crypto becomes very passive because you just have to stand around and use his drone if it's not used right. But stick around to see who you should pair Crypto with. Next on the list in the B tier is Pathfinder, the OG Pathfinder. Pathfinder is great for movement. He has one of the best movement abilities because he can go vertical, horizontal, and in a non-linear direction. He is great to use, but a negative about him is his skill level to use his grapples is very high, and he probably has one of the worst passives in the game because when he originally came out, his passive was he could scan the beacon and get his ultimate right away, but now we have so many recon characters that can scan the beacons. I think his passive definitely needs a buff, but stick around to see who you should pair Pathfinder with. And the last one in the B tier is the Gas Daddy, Caustic. His ultimate is super great because you can throw it out, spread a lot of gas, do some damage, slow the enemies, and make it hard for the enemies to see. But Caustic's traps just received a nerf and you can destroy them. So learning how to destroy them from an enemy can be very beneficial and reduce the number of traps that you have. But stick around to see who you should pair Caustic with. And now let's get into the A tier. First on the list for the A tier is Bangalore. Great thing about Bangalore is her quick escapability. If you get caught in a fight or a bad position, throw down your smokes, and if they're shooting at you, you get a speed burst to escape. But a negative about Bangalore is there's a lot of scan legends in Apex right now, so trying to hide in her smoke is nearly impossible, especially with all these scan legends out there. But stick around to see who you should pair Bangalore with. Talking about scanning legends, the next one on the list is Bloodhound. He is an OG and probably one of the easier legends to use. A positive about him is his scanning ability is very easy and mindless. You just hit a button and it throws out a scan and you can see the enemies. On the flip side though, being over-reliant on your scans can be very detrimental to your gameplay. You should really get in the habit of going into buildings and being able to find enemies without using the scans. So don't become super reliant on those scans, but Bloodhound is still an A tier character. Stick around to see who you should pair Bloodhound with. Next on the list is our Season 13 legend, Newcastle. Newcastle has a great combination of defense, medic, and movement. If you want to see more about Newcastle and how to use him, click on the video in the top right of the screen. A negative about Newcastle though is with him being brand new, it will take some time to really optimize and get the full use out of all his abilities. Stick around though to see who you should pair Newcastle with. And the final one in the A tier is Ashe. The great thing about Ashe is she can teleport her teams super quickly, and her passive ability helps you find where enemies just died on the map and where the fights are, especially on a large map like Stormpoint, where the action can be pretty dull at times. A negative about Ashe though is her tactical is pretty underwhelming. It only does a little bit of damage and holds on to the enemies for just a little bit, so I'd like to see a slight buff with her tactical. But stick around to see who you should pair Ashe with. Before we get into the S tier, let's talk about team composition and what legends go well together. What playstyle are you looking for? Are you looking for a more competitive playstyle? Maybe a really easy playstyle if you're a newer player. Maybe an aggressive playstyle if you like jumping right into the fights and getting into the action. Or maybe you want a more passive playstyle where you want to lock down an area and dominate that area for the end game. Let's break those down now. If you're looking for legends that are very easy to play, try out Octane, Bloodhound, Bangalore, Lifeline, Loba, Fuse, or Mirage. These are all legends with pretty simplistic abilities and are easy to use if you're a newer player. If you're looking for a more aggressive playstyle, try Pathfinder, Revenant, Seer, or Megi. If you're looking for a more passive legend, try Newcastle, Rampart, Caustic, Wattson, or Crypto. The first composition I would suggest is Valkyrie, Gibraltar, or Wraith. You have a great combination of movement, aggressiveness, and defensiveness. The next composition I would suggest is Ashe, Newcastle, and Horizon. Gives you different aspects of defensiveness, aggressiveness, and movement. The next composition I would suggest is try out Bloodhound, Bangalore, and Pathfinder. When you throw out the smokes from Bangalore, sometimes you cover up your enemies. So if you have a Bloodhound, you can scan them and see them through the smoke, and then Pathfinder gives you that added movement for the team. If you want a more defensive composition, try Caustic, Rampart, and Watson. If you're all about moving your team as fast as possible around the map, try Octane, Pathfinder, and Horizon. Or try this legend composition of Horizon, throw out your ultimate, then you have Fuse and Caustic to throw their abilities at that ultimate and really decimate the opponent. Now let's talk about some things you might be having troubles with. If you're having trouble finding enemies around the map, try the top 3 recon legends of Bloodhound, Crypto, and Seer. If you feel like your team is too slow, try the movement legends of Octane, Pathfinder, and Horizon. If you want to hunker down in a building and dominate the area, try these defensive composition of Gibraltar, Newcastle, and Caustic. If you're sick of getting third-partied and you want to escape better, try this escape composition of Wraith, Valkyrie, and Ashe. If you just want to attack every enemy's squad, try these high damage composition of Fuse, Caustic, and Rampart. And now let's get into the S tier. First one on the list is Horizon. Horizon is great, especially on the map Stormpoint, because she has a great change of height movement and can really get around the map pretty quickly. A negative about Horizon though is her ultimate can be pretty easily destroyed if all 3 enemies focus shooting on it and destroy it. Next on the list, and the highest pick rate for many seasons, the OG, Wraith. Wraith has a great escape ability to get out of tough situations and just reset the team and yourself. Wraith's passive though can be pretty weak and buggy at times and not work to its fullest extent, so maybe a slight buff to her passive is needed. And next on the list is Gibraltar. Gibraltar is definitely used on very high T competitive matches. Gibraltar's bubble and gun shield can protect you and your squad from a lot of damage. A slight negative about Gibraltar though is he does not have any movement abilities, so when the movement meta and the importance of movement in Apex, it can be very tough to use Gibraltar at times. And next on the list for the S tier is Valkyrie. Valkyrie is a great legend to really change height and maneuver around Stormpoint. Her ultimate is very great in trying to reposition on the map, especially in a big map like Stormpoint. But if you're using Valkyrie, try not to become too reliant on your passive. If you're flying up into the air using her passive, you become an easier target for the enemies. Write down in the comments down below which legend are you using in Season 13 and which legend should I make a video guide about. Write it in the comments down below. And don't forget to hit like and subscribe, it really helps us out. If you want to see how to use Newcastle to his fullest potential, click this video right here.